Okay, hello everyone. I'm agronomist at Institute, as a state research institute. I'm focused more on numbers and pictures, which I used to that. So I'm not sociologist. I'm not maybe talking in very nice way, English way. So please forgive me in advance. But I'd like to show some very descriptive, very picture way presentation, which I hope you enjoy. Also, I'd like to say what was mentioned before. I'm particularly involved in agroforestry, and I'm a member of executive committee of European Agroforestry Association. So I have good connections with people in Europe connected to agroforestry. And if you would have some questions relating agroforestry, please give me and I can forward them to colleagues of mine. Basically, my presentation consists of some introduction to trees outside forests and agroforestry. These are two different things which are connected, and people do not understand it in a good way. Secondly, I'd like to present you some definitions and some slides about context of profitability in agroforestry systems, not actually the exact numbers, but just to give you impression how we can understand it. I show you also some examples of modern early cropping systems and silvopastoral systems, which I think important to see. I show you some agroforestry innovations which were managed to develop within AFINET projects, which is just about to finish, which actually is finished. And just a few words about connections between agroforestry and common agriculture policy, which is very important for supporting good solutions. Monocultures are increasing in area of monocultures are increasing across all Europe and world. And farmers also cutting trees very often, which is not good for environment, which most environmentally friendly people know it. Cutting the trees probably has implications on increasing sensitivity of crops on drought. And here you can see the situation with drought in Poland. We have very big problems in last year and 2 years ago with winter cereals, especially because we had a warm season, a warm winter season like now, almost without snow. We have almost no snow now, up to now. And also in last year, we have big problems with maize, which is typical monoculture crop. So you can see red area, which means that more than 20% of losses of yield occurred. Trees can also help to limit flood risk. They are also very important to protect soil for that. And unprotected soils are destroyed by erosion, by winter erosion, by water erosion. And it's estimated that more than 12% of European agricultural lands loses more than 5 tons soil per hectare per year. So it's a lot. That's why we need to really to protect these soils in different ways. And unprotected banks of rivers also are do not prevent actually leaching nutrients from agricultural land, and this has impact on water quality and then eutrophication, so water quality of all surface waters is decreasing. Trees has also important for lengthen water cycle in the agricultural landscapes, because they slow surface runoff and they increase infiltration of water to the groundwater. They protect waters against leaching against nutrients leaching from agricultural land, which I already mentioned. And by huge transpiration of trees to the atmosphere, the water is also transported nearby in the landscape and going down through raining back to the ground. There is really confusing, people are confusing very often what trees on agricultural land means. Trees outside forests on agricultural land are understood in different way. There are different terms on that. For example, in Poland, we have the term zadrzewienie, which has very broad definition. And probably in the same situation or similar situations in many countries. But agroforestry is something different, which is connected strictly to agriculture, to economy and environment, which is connected. So agroforestry means land use systems where woody perennials, so trees or bushes, are deliberately integrated with crops or animals or both on the same land, on the same parcel. So the land of the trees actually may be in side parcels, like usually intercropped systems with crops and trees, or maybe also on the borders of the parcels, like hedges or windbreaks. This is definition of European Commission, which is, I think, official. And we should remember that also not all trees in agricultural landscape can be described as agroforestry. Most of trees are just separate individual trees or belong to forest as a complex of trees. And there is a lot of definitions describing forest. One is used by United Nations to actually calculate carbon accumulation in the ground by land use. And in this way, forest can range from 0.05 hectare to 1 hectare, and also tree crown cover has wide range. Each country has different definition in these ranges. So it's a mess actually, and forest usually is not allowed to be grazed by national law in many countries. So we should remember that there is a strict actually difference between agroforestry meaning and forest meaning and separate trees meaning in different countries. So agroforest is a complex and complicated word in terms of other words which exist as well. In Europe, we divided agroforestry into different types of practices. And here, briefly, I want to describe them. The first one is silvopasture. So it's a combination of trees and animals. Basically, animals are grazed in a wooded area, no matter what design, but not actually forest. The second is silvoarable. Usually it's an intercrop system which is combining annual crops, sometimes perennial crops with trees or bushes. We have also hedgerows, windbreaks, and riparian buffer strips, which adjust to some other land use like water or other land parcels. We have forest farming, so forested area which is used for cultivation of special crops with medicinal, ornamental, or culinary aim. And we have home gardens or kitchen gardens, but usually people are familiar with forest gardens names. So it's just multi-layered system with shady-like crops. And agroforestry is very well operating at landscape scale. When could have different functions: microclimatic, biodiversity improving, protecting households, soil, crops, and so on, and rivers, or generally surface waters, canals. This is very important to understand agroforestry, that it works at at landscape scale. And the benefit of agroforestry landscape scale is improving the yield of crops. Very often windbreaks improve yield by even 15, 20 or more percent in comparison to monoculture. And here you can observe the examples, data from US, Canada, and Poland as well. It depends on height of the trees. So at some distance from the tree, usually 5 to 15 heights of a tree, the yield of crops is increasing because evapotranspiration is decreasing, and also close to the tree there is snow cover, bigger snow cover, larger, so it can protect crops in the winter time. And trees should be planted in the right place in the landscape, and we should think about that when we plant. Riparian buffer strips, like I said, are very important in protection against nutrients leaching, nitrogen, phosphates, and soil particles to the waters. And usually up to 11 meters, it's the width of buffer strips up to 11 meters is enough to protect against this leaching. More than 11, like 20 meters and so on, can add value, so the buffer strips can additionally stabilize the soil, improve plant diversity, insect diversity, and this is so they can give you additional functions. These just examples how buffer strips can be designed on the farm as well. I think I go on. I don't have too much time to describe it. And what is important now is we should think to plant trees in the right time, right place, and right tree. So every tree has different functions in each location, and is depending what we need from the tree to protect soil, to give us some food like fruits, to give us timber, to give us bioenergy, biomass. It depends on us, and it depends on the environment we are located. And biodiversity is another indirect benefit from the trees, which we should consider, take into account when we plant the trees in the landscape, because it has impact indeed on the crops and on welfare generally. So, planting the trees in the landscape, we maintain natural environment, water, soil, and in effect achieve greater productivity at lower inputs and bigger effects. But combining approaches at the field level, so I would say leaving residues from harvest on the ground or using reduced tillage with trees which are located at the border of the parcel is the best approach to protect soil and protect crops and increase yields. And this way, we really are good managers of the landscape and we have bigger profits. And how we can design these trees? There are many examples of design of putting the trees in the field level or landscape level, but most common is just intercropping systems, so I would tell about that later on. Oh, just now. We call them early cropping systems. This is very increasing modern system in Europe and across the world. Very efficient, I would say. This is combination of trees which are planted in rows, timber trees, biomass trees like willow, poplar, or alder, or robinia. I would say, how is called? Black locust, sorry. Combination of these trees with crops. Sometimes you have, you can also plant crops in orchards, or in particularly you plant fruit trees on the land in intercropping system, and you combine with annual crops or with biannual crops as well. And here the design is very important to, it's a complicated issue to not make too much shade for crops beneath the trees. And the benefit, the great benefit, if you well design the agroforestry system, is how the system is operating. Here we have a comparison of agroforestry and forest plantation, and you can see easily that roots of trees are going down and do not compete with roots of crops, in opposite to forest plantation. And optimal design of land use is very, very important. And we speak here about land use or land equivalent ratio. What is land equivalent ratio? Is the ratio of the area under sole cropping to the area under intercropping needed to give equal amounts of yield at the same management level. So even if we can have lower yields in intercropping systems and agroforestry systems, what you can observe in this example from UK, a total amount of biomass on the same amount of land is bigger. And this is very, of course, it's not common, you have not say this is everywhere, but in a well-designed system, many studies, many research studies, we can observe that it's like this. So it's just a proof, evidence that we can do it. We can also, there are other examples how to combine agroforestry with other crops. And this is example combination of timber trees with biomass trees. And it's quite particular. but it's important that you can really have different ideas how to combine plants at the landscape or at the crop level, at the field level, sorry, these crops. And we have different opportunities, different, I would say, designs to explore, and we have to think how to do the best way. This is example from UK and France, where they plant poplars, where they plant apple on monocultural land. They plant in France very often walnuts, or for example, hazelnuts or willow. Considering agroforestry planning, we have to think about time. So in the beginning, probably you would prefer summer annuals, which are less shaded by the trees. Later on, maybe you would prefer winter annuals, which better use the light in the early, at the beginning of the year, in the spring, because trees are bigger and they appear, the leaves of trees appear during late spring. But later on, when trees are really big, you can change it to silvopastoral system. So this is a very tricky but indeed intelligent form of design. And silvopasture systems. Silvopasture systems, so trees on the pasture give animals really a lot of benefits. I have 5 minutes. I just found it that I'm a bit late, so I have to go on. Sorry for that. And just briefly, a few slides, what additionally trees can give animals. Protein. It gives protein, especially black locust and wild mulberry are very good at that. It gives minerals, especially calcium and potassium and selenium, which are deficient macronutrients in animals. And it gives biodiversity. Forest garden, I think most of you knows what it is. I go on. And trees can be element of marketing strategy. And this is very often happening in France and or in Spain and Portugal, where trees are included in the product marketing strategy. For example, with pigs, traditional breeds of pigs, with goose, with goats, with walnuts in Belgium, or with traditional products from a forest garden in Hungary. So it's really important. Now, just a few slides about AFINET project, which is just finished. And I can briefly present what was the aim of the project. The aim of the project was to disseminate the knowledge of agroforestry in Europe and propose innovations on agroforestry and just push on this issue to policymakers and to farmers. We have many meetings in 9 countries, and I think the results are really impressive. You can look at our website, EURAF Agroforestry EU AFINET, when you can see our brochures, more than 50 brochures, most of them translated in 9 languages. These are examples of these brochures. Some of them are really innovative, useful, I hope. We have special guideline book, which is available online with practices, agroforestry practices. We built a really big knowledge cloud about all agroforestry systems in Europe. And you have found, you can find here about 1,000 documents, about 200 documents from Poland, always segregated. And some movies are also present, which I invite you to explore, to see. At European Agroforestry Federation, we really lobby agroforestry and European Commission and European Parliament, and also our national delegates do it at national level. We have a EURAF Newsletter every 3 months, and I'd like to invite you to also to send you articles, your ideas about agroforestry. They can appear in our newsletter, and we have thousands of followers. Agroforestry support in the European Union is quite diversified. I'd like to only point your attention to France and Hungary, which are quite interesting countries supporting agroforestry in relative terms quite a lot. But we don't know what will be situation in the next programming period. Yes, so we're just working on that. If you would like to contribute to common agriculture policy after 2020, you can look our document and send your comments, or particularly to me or to some people, or just go to this document directly if you have access, and make your comments. Some years ago in Poland, I established Polish Agroforestry Association, and we are quite developing this issue, and I would say lobbying also agroforestry, working with Ministry of Agriculture, and also we have projects. Now we have one project, Horizon 2020. So if everybody wants to be involved in agroforestry in your countries, please go to EURAF website and contact the national delegate. I'd like to invite all of you to a really big event. If you want to if you want to meet interesting people from all around the Europe, young people, experts, most interesting people connected to agroforestry will be there. Please go to 5th European Agroforestry Conference this May, 18th, 20 May in Sardinia, beautiful place. And if I have just 40 seconds, I'd like to run YouTube, where my boss, Patrick Worms, which is actually the president of European Agroforestry Federation, invites you to be part of this really amazing event.